Comics First is live from New York Comic Con 2017 with the cast of Runaways. So, what can you tell us about your character, Renza?
Alex Wilder, he's a little bit of a nerd, a little bit of a loner, but what he wants to do is reunite his group of friends that he had his entire life, and so certain events happen. There's a sacrifice, end of episode 1, and it brings them all together, and they have to, come together against an enemy that happens to be their parents, which happen to be supervillains.
Well, Chase is a lacrosse player, but has untapped flashes of brilliance when it comes to engineering. And so obviously, for those who have read the comics, we've changed him a little bit. We've made him a bit more interesting to watch, a bit more layered. And I think throughout the first season, we have a beautiful arc between obviously Chase and Gert, love interests, and then we have a beautiful family story that isn't so beautiful but told in a beautiful way, which is he does not get along with his dad whatsoever, and he's in a bit of a sticky, difficult situation at home. So you're going to see that revealed throughout the season. Obviously, I can't talk about too much because there's a Marvel guy over there with a laser pointing at me if I talk about too much.
Molly's this big ball of energy. She's super curious, she's passionate, she's driven, she's determined, and she is young, but she's still super mature and very observant and aware, and I think that's really important for Molly. Before I even auditioned for this, I didn't know what I was going in for because Marvel's very top secret. So once I booked it and I knew what it was about, I immediately read the first comic book and I fell in love with how Brian K. Vaughan is such a visionary, and he modernized something that he wrote such a long time ago. And I was obsessed with Molly, so I prepared with her by definitely looking at the comic books and putting a lot of myself into Molly to make her as relatable as possible.
I think it's pretty similar to the comic version. I definitely think fans of the comic book won't be disappointed, but I do think that the comic books were written several years ago, so it's it's a modern, it's today's version of what was written several years ago, with obviously some tweaks to keep fans excited and unsure of what's to come. But I think the spirit of the comic books is there.
So Gert's like this badass feminist chick, and I think the thing I love the most about her is this. You get to dive into what this feminism truly means to a young girl, and this passion for a better world, and this want for a better life for people, despite any personal beef, despite anything like that. She is overall about the cause, and she can put her personal problems aside for a minute and be like, you know what? I'm fighting for your rights, and I can't be a hypocrite about this.
What got me, well, Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, their names attached to the project was, also a good reason to audition for this. And Marvel, I'm not going to pass that up. But also, I mean, for the audition, I didn't get a script, and even the sides were never going to be used in the show, and her name was changed, so it was a lot of guessing. But from what I read from the sides, it seemed like an interesting project, and they specifically asked for a Japanese American to audition for this role, so I just thought, cool.
For me personally, Runaways has always been my favorite comic. First time I read it, I was like, I don't know who Brian K. Vaughan is, but this guy is speaking to me. This is my people. And when we went in to meet with Marvel, obviously we are partners, and this wasn't going to work unless Stephanie loved the comic as much as I did. So I said, please read this.
And I read it and I fell in love. I'm not a comic book reader naturally, but I really fell in love with the world that Brian and Adrian created. The diversity of the characters, the strong female characters, the great cliffhangers at the end of every episode, and his incredible voice that just had so much humor and heart.
I think what made the show so unique was what made the comic so unique, which was that, Brian K. Vaughan and Adrian Alonso, came up with a story that at the time, which is hard to believe it was 15 years ago, really spoke to a generation in a way that hadn't ever been spoken to, which was, it was incredibly diverse. There were really strong female characters, and at the same time, that problem of trying to find your identity and that problem of being able to separate yourself from your parents was a universal theme. And being able to take that and put it in the capable hands of Josh and Stephanie, who have, through the OC, through Gossip Girl, found a way of speaking to that generation in a unique way, it really does give us an opportunity to be able to tell a story like we've never done before. Not just young heroes, but young music, and at the same time being able to tell a story from the parents' point of view, so that you're caught up in a way that no matter how old you are, you're just not entirely sure which side you're on, and that's a very exciting place to be.
How much reading did you do prior to taking on the
I
role?
read the entire first volume up until where I die. And so right there, I decided to cut it. I was like, all right, maybe that's all I need to know. So just to help me with the character, understand where the source material was. But then after that, I also didn't want it, because the script is a little bit different than the comic book, otherwise why would we do it? So I didn't want it to interfere too much, but I read all of the first volume and then continued with the series and just played with it from there.
We definitely stay true to the comics for sure, but we kind of make it more modernized and in like an open range, and it takes it to different levels, and you go through every single character. You learn more about them and their personal lives. And the comic book, you do learn a lot about them, but I feel like we're up close in their face, so you could see everything we're feeling and thinking, which is the most amazing about TV magic, you know?
We all get along so well as a cast. We have really great chemistry, all 6 of us, so I think that's such a fun aspect of it. And I also think that the added storyline of the parents and what they have going on is such a welcome storyline and so much fun too. And we're not on set for a lot of the parent stuff, so I know when I watch it back, I get really excited to see their storylines as well.
You know, this idea of every teenager thinks their parents are evil. What if your parents actually are? Who can't relate to that? You know, so it started just from the sort of universal idea that sort of resonates, whether it's a comic book story or not, about parents and teenagers. But then, as Stephanie was saying, Brian's voice. I mean, the characters are so distinct. There was so much humor, the pop culture references. It all just felt like our world and so modern, and that felt like an exciting story to tell.
Yeah, I think the modernity of the characters, there's 4 female characters in The Young Runaways and 2 guys, which, you know, usually it would be the reverse of that. It felt so contemporary with the references and the voice and just the things that the kids had to say, what they were interested in, what they were curious about, their points of view.
It's one of those things where we're hoping that people, you know, watch the first 2 hours. The first hour is from the kids' point of view, the second hour is from the parents' point of view. And so by the end of the second hour, you really do have a sense of, wow, I'm not really sure which side I'm on. And there are so many mystery boxes to open. Oh, and by the way, there's a dinosaur.
How important is this show for a younger female audience as well as the diverse cast that Runaways has as well?
The great thing about diversity on this large of a scale, it's not like one token character, because tokenism can be flawed when one person has to represent an entire group of people. There's no way that's going to be done accurately, and then any flaw can be portrayed as a flaw within said demographic, and it can get really messy really fast. So to have such diversity and in such large quantities is so exciting, because you can dive deeper into the nuance of a person without actually having the pressure of misrepresenting anyone. You can show these people and have the audience empathize with them in a new way.
We're an ethnically diverse, female-centric cast. Like, what better way to represent what we need right now? With our political stance, I think it's really important to have like a broad spectrum of ethnicities and broad spectrum of female powers. I think it shows that we could be our own voice and be our own heroes. So I'm just really excited about that. And my favorite aspect of Molly is how a badass she is, and she's like learning and like developing. I think since all of them are kind of grown up, you kind of see her grow throughout every single episodes, which is insane.
We wanted to start to explore the idea of the young hero. That so many of the Marvel stories are about adults who suddenly have their lives turned upside down by the fact that they've had powers thrust upon them, and then how are they going to deal with that? And that works even if you're in a situation where you're young people. And so, but the difference is that you're still trying to figure out your life, and you don't know who you are, where you're going to be, or even whether or not you're going to get your homework done. And then you marry that to an extraordinary situation, and I think you have something which is extraordinary. But you always have to remember to keep it grounded, keep it locked down, and make sure that our characters are characters that people really can identify with. And I think this cast in many ways allows that to happen.
Why should people watch Runaways?
I would say Runaways is a mix between the OC, Gossip Girl, in a Marvel universe, and has a glossy darkness that no other Marvel show has.
It's The Runaways. If you haven't read the comic books already, you should do that, and then you will want to watch the show. And it's going to be so cool. And I love everybody in the cast, and it's going to be a great time.
It's got it all. What doesn't it have? It's got exciting. It's Marvel. It's got the action packed. It's got teenagers, if you like them. It's got parent and secrets and lies and twists and turns. It's very exciting.
Why shouldn't you watch The Runaways?
Runaways is woke.